Hi, and welcome back. This is another episode of Finding Your Summit. I'm Mark Pattison, and this week I'm really excited to have this guy on the podcast. His name is Chris Long, and for those of you who do not know, I actually played with his father, Howie, with the Raiders, and Chris is the son. He's played now going into his 10th year, going to play for the Eagles. Chris was a number 2 draft pick years ago for the Rams, and then went on last year and played with the Patriots that won the Super Bowl, probably the most epic Super Bowl ever played in the history of the game. We talk about that. Where it really gets cool is how I met Chris was down in Tanzania. So he is the founder of WaterBoys.org. So it's the whole mission of going out and building water wells within Tanzania for the Maasai tribe people. And we just had a great experience doing that, raising money, and then actually climbing Mount Kilimanjaro with 6 other NFL players and some Green Berets and whatnot. So this is a great episode, and it really shows how Chris has taken his platform, developed it, and understands where he's at in terms of what he can do to affect change. He's done that. It's amazing, just as simple as that is, to build a water well and what that can do for a community. So stay tuned for that. And as always, please go in and rate, review on iTunes. It helps us out, and we just get the word going further, and it's greatly appreciated. So thank you so much for that. So here we go, Chris Long. I'm talking to Chris Long, who was with the Patriots, now with the Philly Eagles. And I got to know Chris down in Tanzania, Africa, this last year during a project called WaterBoys that he's founded. We're going to talk about. So today we go all the way from World HQ here in Hermosa Beach, crisscrossing the country, to Charleston, Virginia. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing real good, man. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, man. It's so great to have you on. I know we've been trying to battle back and forth with all your commitments and with the NFL and switching teams and whatnot. I wanted to do this podcast for a while, and you've got so much interesting stuff going on. Just want to get into it, but I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Any humidity out there at the beach, or it's 96 and humid here right now?
No, we don't get that here in California. So I think you were born in, Santa Monica when you were like 1 years old?
Yeah, I was born in Santa Monica and grew up in Redondo the first couple of years of my life, and then Palos Verdes and out. Moved to Virginia at 8 years old, and been home ever since.
That's great. That's great. So I want to jump forward, and then I want to go back. So for all the listeners out there, so I actually played with Chris's dad, Howie Long. So Howie's a very famous guy, was a fantastic football player, Hall of Famer. And I had the good fortune of rubbing elbows with him for a few years, and just a great guy, solid guy. And there's probably not a lot of guys who can actually say this, but I remember, Chris, when we were sitting on top of Kilimanjaro, and I came over and I sat next to you, and I put my arm around you, and I said, how many guys can say that I've climbed with you, Chris Long, and I've played with Howie? There's probably...
Yeah, you got to cross some generational gaps there and stay in good shape.
Well, I've tried to do that, as you know, and you were a little bit delirious after a while up. We were exposed at such a long time up on top, so you probably don't remember that, but I do, and it was very crystal clear for me. So it was a great moment.
Yeah, it was. Summit Day was tough, buddy. It was tough, but we had a great group.
It was awesome. It was really incredible, and so we'll get into that in a little bit. But what I wanted to do is go back a little bit and start with your upbringing. So you grew up on the East Coast, right?
Yeah, largely. I mean, like I said, ever since I was 8, Virginia's been home, and grew up in Virginia. And it's been home. It's nice to be back on the East Coast playing football now, although I do miss the Midwest a little bit. That was a cool experience.
So what was that like growing up with Howie as your dad, right? I mean, I know Howie, the teammate, and, you are one of the few guys in America who you grew up with kind of a American icon who really what he has become, and, the kind of pressure that maybe you felt or didn't feel, or the way he, groomed you guys. I mean, how many guys he has 3 sons and 2 of them become number 1 first round draft choices, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think a testament to him genetically for sure.
Yeah.
Great player. Great
First of all, I know it's your mom. It's not Howie.
Yeah. It's my mom, Diane. She was a solid amateur tennis player. So that, and continues to be. So that was it. But yeah, and then my third brother Howie, who's now in football as well, as an executive in Oakland, well, as a personnel guy. So everybody kind of found their way back into the game. Which the irony there for us is that my parents never steered me towards playing football or following in Dad's footsteps. Actually, it was quite the opposite. I think anybody who goes through a decade or more in the NFL and realizes what a toll it takes on your body, I'm reaching that time period. And the last thing I want my son Waylon to do is play in the NFL, but it just kind of happened that way. It's a wonderful lifestyle. We do get compensated heavily for playing a game that we all love, but there are sacrifices, and we feel them. So that wasn't what my pops wanted us to do, but it just kind of worked out that way. But he did a terrific job of focusing on who are we as people. We're not special because of what my dad does. We're no different than anybody else, and I think that's helped along the way. And I continue to learn a lot from him as a father, and obviously I got a great mother as well.
Yeah, he was always a very committed guy, dedicated guy, and the type of a teammate you'd want to have. Really follow that same path. So growing up, though, you going back to saying you were never pushed necessarily in that direction. So I think you were a pretty good lacrosse player. So lacrosse is obviously a huge sport. It's starting to come out here on the West Coast, but mainly kind of an East Coast thing, right?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, as I explained to people with lacrosse, and I also played baseball and a little bit of basketball. I'd say basketball was probably just a good exercise sport for me. I didn't have much of a jump shot. For me, I guess baseball and lacrosse were my favorite. And as I got older, my body started to change. And as I started working out hard for football, I stopped being able to hit the curveball. And baseball kind of, you just naturally gravitate to what you're going to be good at. And any kid that, is deciding on a sport, I think they always go with what makes them feel the best. And for me, that was football because it was what I was best at. So, but lacrosse is a lot of fun. It's a very athletic game. It is moving out to the West Coast. My wife actually played at Virginia, and the way I would explain lacrosse to people that don't know anything about it geographically is you kind of start in the Mid-Atlantic, and the further north you go, the better. All the way up to Long Island, and that's kind of the epicenter is Baltimore to Long Island, and then down in Virginia we're pretty good too. And now it's moving out west. Actually, in St. Louis, it was developing as well. So. I think when I retire, I might get into some men's leagues. It's a good workout. It's a lot of fun. It's like pickup basketball with a stick.
Yeah, that's great. There's an old story, going back to your basketball, we were talking about that your dad, we used to work out at a place called the Spectrum up here in Manhattan Beach. And, during the off season, he'd be playing basketball. And, he would want to take the ball down the court like Charles Barkley. And there would always seem to be these weekend warriors that want to go out there and be that guy to take the charge. Mm-hmm. And your dad would come barreling down the court, and he's built like you, right? And these guys would just take the charge, and they're like 5'7", $150, and here comes he just run them over like a freight train. So
was it concrete or
no? That was live oak. Yeah,
nobody's taking those concrete.
No. This was a full indoor hardwood floor. It was great though. It was just great comedy to sit there on the outside and say, okay, who's the next dude that's going to step up and take this on versus just let the guy go, right? I mean,
my dad also thought he was a perimeter player. I don't know if you remember that, but he thought he was like a 2-guard.
Oh, yeah.
He couldn't shake that. It was a jump shot every other time down the court. So I've seen him play hoops. He's actually not bad. He's better than I was.
Yeah, no, it's great. So for me, when I was back in high school, right, things came very easy, and the game has developed a lot where there's specialty camps and you're lifting a lot more and things like that. So certainly there's a generational thing here going on. But I want to get into Virginia really quick, and the University of Virginia, by the way, probably the most beautiful campus I've ever been on. Just incredible, very colonial and whatnot. But so I remember when I first went to the University of Washington, we had this famous coach, Don James, and I looked out there, and all these guys were developed. They were emotionally, spiritually, physically. They were ready to play in the Pac-10 in those days. Mm-hmm. Now it's the Pac-12. Yeah. And I just was not there, right? And so it's really where I grew up and where I really found myself, I think, in terms of what do I want to be? Do I want to be that guy, or am I going to be, this other person that never made it, full of potential? And so for you, growing up, did you excel in high school, or do you think it really came on, when you were at Virginia? Because you ended up being a number one draft pick, you're All-American and all this stuff. But, was that from freshman you came in, you're like on that trajectory, or did you have to work to get that to that spot?
No, I had to work at it. I was always, as much God-given talent as I have, and certainly more talented than most people in high school, and then by lesser margin in college, and then as you get older in the NFL, everybody's talented. But I was always a grinder, I was a worker, and I was a late bloomer in high school. I mean, I wasn't one of these kids that came out freshman year and dominated. I had to wait my turn a little bit. And at UVA, it was slightly the same way. I was a 4-star out of 5-star, recruit. And with all these recruiting services that are popping up now, it wasn't quite that way. But, and around the turn of the century, it was getting big. And, I used to read things about I was overrated. It was just because of my dad that I even got an offer, and that sort of thing. And it really motivated me. And when I got to UVA, I didn't, I contributed, but I didn't light it on fire early. I was more of a nickel package sub down guy. And it just slowly, I grinded away at it and improved every year. And it was a struggle, though. I mean, like you alluded to, you learn a lot about yourself at every level. And in high school, I was being developed. My coach, Sean Blake, is still a great friend and a good mentor to me. And actually, my college coach, Al Groh, just came by my house yesterday. So I remain close with all those guys because they all had a big role in developing me as a man. I think, to your point, I think when I got to Virginia is when I really became a man and was really challenged. And I do believe this as a football player and a person, you're always growing up and you're developing. It's not like you hit some age and you're like, okay, now I'm an adult. I think through my career in the NFL, I've also been able to grow as a man and as a football player, and my mindset has changed all the time. So it's a journey.
Yeah, I know that really kicks into once you get married and you have kids, which you just had, and that's been, I know, a big moment for you, which is great. So you go on and you have this great career at Virginia, and now you're the number 2 pick of the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So you go to the Rams, St. Louis, right?
Yeah.
Now back here in LA. So things come full circle, don't they?
Yeah.
So what was that like? The expectations. There was some losing going on, and that must have been tough, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. When I look at all my accomplishments up to the draft and through the draft, it was always about pressure. What'd your dad do? Can you live up to this? Can you live up to that? And I do regret not being able to at times just enjoy the accomplishment of it. Like, hey, you're the first person in your family to do a remarkable thing. There's always an expectation hanging over your head. And but at the end of the day, expectations and criticism and pressure, they help shape you and they help strengthen you if you don't back down from the challenge. So, for me, when I got drafted, I think where some people might, not all, but some people might look at it like, oh, this is an accomplishment. I've made it. I always looked at it like, okay, what's the next challenge? This is a challenge. It's a privilege, but there's pressure with this, and I have to live up to something. And this isn't an accomplishment. This is just the beginning. So, and I also was cognizant of the fact that I'm going to a team that had won 1 or 2 games the year before, was in turmoil. And anytime you're a good college player, it's almost better to be a middle of the first round guy. You get about a fourth of the expectations on the 3 times a better team that's going to be more conducive to you performing. And so I knew it was going to be a struggle. How do you go rush the passer and put up big numbers without leads when the ball is constantly being run up y'all's you know what? So that was kind of what I knew I was going into, and I just braced for it. And it never quite got better. I mean, as far as our success on the team, but it was I don't regret any of it.
Yeah, that's that can be a tough spot. I was a 7th round draft pick, so I remember the first round guys always have this massive pressure to live up to, and if you're not delivering at a certain level, there's a lot of criticism. So it's kind of like you can only go down versus for me, all I got to do is go up, right? No
doubt, and we're lucky. We're lucky to be picked that high. I was one of the last guys in the old CBA, so we were we were overpaid. I mean, for our value to the team, anybody who was drafted in the first round was going to naturally be overpaid. Well, you're not going to give the money back. You're going to do your best and try to do the most you can with it. But, rookies come in the league and, playing in locker rooms where they're making more money than guys that have been in the league 10 years and proving themselves over and over again. So you have to be cognizant of that, be humble, be thankful for those veterans and show them that you're about your business when you walk in. And, my first year was solid. I played well. I think it wasn't like I went out and had 10 sacks, but I played well, and I was transitioning from a 3-4 to a 4-3. Where things got tough for me was my second year. That was a very long year. I looked up week 8 and I didn't have a sack, and we were really bad. And so not only was I not playing that well, I was still figuring out. I kind of hit a wall where my development had kind of stalled. And I just remember the talk bust, this guy can't play. What the hell's going on? When really, if I'd have gotten drafted a little bit somewhere else, they'd probably say, oh, this guy's a pretty good player. So that's just part of the privilege of being drafted in the first round. And I remember a crossroads about halfway through that second year where I had to say, okay, I'm either going to accept my fate as being a disappointment, or I'm going to take it up a notch and change my preparation and change the way I go about things. I thought I was working hard, but I just stuck to the vets and learned a little bit. Second half of the year, I had like 5 sacks, and then the next 4 years, I had over 40. So it was that turning point that kind of got me to cement my reputation as a solid player in the league.
Yeah. So, the name of this podcast is called Finding Your Summit. And I think, there in some cases, there's some guys who have really struggled, and maybe it's financially, or I've got some guys coming on the podcast. One guy doesn't have arms or legs. And, you look at that situation and you go, oh my God, relative to that. But I think everybody, for you had a lot of things going for you, but it's all relative to your own situation. So, yeah. Even though that the money was a byproduct of what you were able to achieve in college, and I've been with you now. I spent 12 days with you in Africa, and I see the type of guy you are, and it matters to you. Your pride matters, and wanting to do better, and what's the next thing. So you're not looking back and saying, I was a number 1 draft pick. You're more going, I'm not there. I'm struggling. There's adversity. We're losing. And that's not fun. And what can I do to make things better? Right. And that's what this whole thing's about.
Absolutely. And for me, I really do believe when I look at people, and sometimes I'm way too down the middle and I don't want to judge people, but I think as players and as people sometimes, I think when you're not doing well or you're not doing good enough, it's never 100% your fault. And when you're doing great and you're on top of the mountain, so to speak, as you're talking about, you never did it all alone. So there's always circumstances either way. And so I think that helps you kind of, keep a humble mindset and realize that there's so many outside forces and variables that go into somebody's success or failure on a football field.
Yep.
Scheme, the team, how they're playing, injury, things you can't control. All you can control, and this is obviously a Howieism, is your hard work and your toughness, and those things you can control, and you got to deal with the consequences of where the chips fall. So at that point, I was at peace with whatever happened, and luckily it turned out to trend in the right direction for me.
Yeah, I mean, I really talk about, preparation meets opportunity, and opportunity then breeds confidence, right? Mm-hmm, and so, and so you're going through this, this kind of up and down roller coaster for you in terms of losing, and now it's about an individual. How can I help the team in the best way? You're down in St. Louis for 8 years, and then you get the magic call to go play with the Patriots, right? This last year.
Yeah.
So now you're going from, really it was the kind of the outhouse to the penthouse in terms of the success that they have had, and you guys end up going to the flippin' Super Bowl and winning the whole thing. So tell me about I never went to a Super Bowl. I went to a lot of great things, Rose Bowls and Orange Bowl, but I was never in a Super Bowl. What was that?
No doubt about it. I mean,
and probably the most epic Super Bowl of all time.
Yeah, comeback.
Yeah, right. Comeback it was insane.
So I joke with people about being down 23 points at the half. I think I might have been better equipped than some on the Patriots to be down 23 at the half because I had a lot of practice at it in St. Louis. So for 8 years,
that's the preparation meets opportunity, right?
Yeah. Exactly. For 8 years, 7 wins was the ceiling for us, and we never could quite get over the hump. And I absolutely loved my teammates there, and we had a really good defensive line, and at times a really good defense, and we just could never get over the hump. And I still look back and I miss those guys, and I miss those days, even though they were tough. I really found a way to enjoy my teammates and enjoy the challenge. And it tested you every day. But then you get to New England, and it tests you in a different way. Because, after my seventh and eighth year, I went through injuries, 2 1-play injuries, broke my leg and had ankle surgery. And that was another crossroads where it was like, okay, I could either just throw in the towel or try to get back up off the mat one more time and just go see what it feels like to win. And I didn't know what kind of football player I could still be. I thought maybe my body was shot. I'm on the north side of 30. I'm coming off of 2 major injuries. And, I just said, if I'm going to take a shot at something, I'm going to take a shot at something big. So, I got in contact with Bill and we made it happen. And I wasn't making a ton of money, but, I was making less money than I ever made. Is that playing?
No, that's I just 747 came by my window, so
Nice.
it just
Awesome.
went by. Yeah, it's the beach, man. It's the way we fly.
Who would leave the beach? Anyways, it absolutely tests you in a different way because you go from being the man on a team for a long time and struggling, and there's pressure with struggling and there's pressure with losing, but to go into a team that hasn't been out of the playoffs for years and has played in 7 Super Bowls or whatever, to playing with Hall of Famers to your left and to your right. And that's a different expectation. I had no issue fitting into the team concept. I love that. And I love just playing my role. And as they say up there, do your job. And it was a wild ride to look up at the end of the season and say, we have 14 wins. That's double anything I'd ever had.
Yeah.
It's a different culture up there. And I think, it all starts with Tom, but having Bill and having that culture, it's like the perfect storm for success. And it's obviously they're 2 plays away from being 7-time Super Bowl champions in this period. And I was able to be a part of one. And I'll always be thankful that I took that chance because it was a chance for me. I didn't really have a position in that defense, and I'm coming in the new guy, old. People don't know what to think of you. You've been hurt, but I took the chance and it paid off.
Yeah, I mean, you could really tell that you were so grateful to be in that moment. It wasn't just like whoo party, It just seemed like your kid was down there and your wife, and then I know there was a moment where you and your dad were sitting on the Fox booth there talking, and it choked up your dad. He's just, I mean, like, and you can probably appreciate that more now that you have a son, a young. I mean, you've got what, 6 months or a year old. How old's your son?
Well, he's 16 months now.
Oh, 16 months. But he's a little guy, right? But I mean, he's the world to you, right? Just like your kid or Howie's kids mean everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, being a father and you know how it is, it's like I tried to imagine it through his eyes, and it's unimaginable because I'm at the time just watching him take his first steps and all that stuff. And the ride must be crazy as a parent to play the game for 13 years, know everything I'm going through as I enter my 9th and 10th season, and watch me lose, watch me fail, watch me succeed. And now on the biggest stage, we were a part of that biggest comeback in Super Bowl history when everybody thought we were dead to rights. And, it was a special moment, and it goes by like a tornado. It just comes and goes so fast. From the minute you run on the field and you tackle your buddies and like and then you look for your wife and your son, you're just trying to find your family in this sea of people to the moment where the parade, which is a blur for a lot of other reasons, to that ending and everybody jets off out of town and it's over. And, especially if you're moving on to a different team, it's always going to be one of the best memories in my life, easily. But it was over in a flash.
Yeah. Did you go to the White House?
I did not go to the White House.
Yeah.
No.
So we can stay away from that. But
okay.
It's all good. So it's no big deal. But just ask them the question.
Connect the dots. You can probably connect the dots.
It is not a problem. All right. So now you literally moving on. It was funny because so for everybody, we were down in Jim Moore and I and 6 other NFL players were invited to go along with Chris Long's WaterBoy Foundation to go down to Tanzania, raise a bunch of money, and we'll get into that in a minute to help build water wells for the Maasai tribe, the people in the Serengeti. It was amazing. Then we climbed the mountain. So while we're actually on the mountain, Chris had a sat phone, and he's now in this free agency period trying to figure it out. So there's a lot of conversations with Jim Moore, who spent 25 years in the NFL, about what he thinks and where he'd go. And, of course, he knows everybody out there. And he pretty much called it as it was going to play out, right? So there was kind of a flurry of certain guys that got, taken first, swept up, and you were in that kind of second wave, and it all worked out for you. So you're headed to Philly, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, when you're up on that mountain, your biggest fear is that you don't need to sign fast, but your fear is that you're not going to get a call and they're not going to wait. And so, I don't know how many free agents go with sorry, I was on a mountain in Africa excuse and I didn't have service. That doesn't come up for GMs too much. So we had the sat phone, that was handy. And, I got home, took a little time, and just wanted to go to a team that better fit my skill set from a schematic standpoint, and try to, prove that I can still be the player I was a couple years ago, which was a player that was highly disruptive, highly productive, and, more of a centerpiece on a D-line. And so I looked at the Eagles, and they ran the same type of defense we ran, whereas New England's more of a 3-4.
Yep.
You end up inside a lot.
You're a situational guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was a every third down guy. And through the season, I played a ton of snaps on first and second down. But in the playoffs, we played a couple gap scheme teams, which means a lot of double teams down there in that 3 technique. And I'm 258 pounds. It's just not a great fit. So in the playoffs, I ended up as a third down guy, which is a lot of fun. I'd rather do third down than first and second down at my age. But at the end of the day, I wanted to be an every down guy if I was going to keep playing. And, Philly for me is a really good fit, and I'm excited about it.
Well, I've got good news and I got bad news. The good news for you is you got that call, right? So you're just talking about you're waiting on the call, you're in the mountains, who's going to pick you up. So that was the good news. The bad news is I never got the call. So I told you, man, I'm trying to mount my comeback. Right.
Well, I hear you, man. Well, maybe I'll talk to somebody in Philly. You can come join us in this 95. The humidity, you might just explode with the humidity.
No. I got it, baby. So I play in New Orleans, so I understand humidity. Okay. Yeah. And you saw me throw the football up there with all the Tanzanians. So
that was good.
I was practicing a little bit, and I saw you trying to practice your game, ripping those guys a little bit. It was great. A lot of fun. And by the way, that was at about 13,000 feet when we were doing that. So that was a blast.
We were a little more winded than them.
Yeah, no, exactly. So love your football career, and who wouldn't? And what just an amazing resume in terms of what you've been able to accomplish. But I want to ask you, because we actually have never talked about this, about the whole WaterBoys thing. So there's no WaterBoys at all. I mean, there's nothing. And I remember when I originally had climbed Kilimanjaro 5 years ago, I was down there. I was just floored to see all these women walking with these Gatorade-looking buckets around Arusha and up on the mountain, going 2-3 miles to go get water and then bring that water back. And, we'd boil it, of course, and, make food and whatnot. And I looked at it and I was just like, I can't believe they're doing this. And the thing, after being invited and seeing what you had done, I was kind of disappointed in myself, and that I hadn't taken that opportunity, because I felt the same thing. I saw the same thing as you, but I didn't act on it, and you did. So why did you go to Africa to start? Why did you go to Tanzania? And then what was that moment for you that it clicked and like, I want to do something about this?
Well, for me, Africa was a trip where I was feeling kind of unsettled. Year 6 in my career, I was playing well. But football just, and it still isn't completely fulfilling to me. I'm the guy that gets jealous of the people that get to go to, Peace Corps and go build houses in Costa Rica, and they're like, well, I want to be in the NFL. I'm like, well, I want to do what you do, I kind of get this fear of missing out when I hear about people traveling the world. So I went to Tanzania to climb this mountain. I like to climb around, home in the Blue Ridge, and this is obviously a different level, but it was the perfect kind of challenge for me geographically and physically and emotionally and mentally to kind of make me feel like I had busted out of this box I was living in, this football only box. So I went with the former teammate James Hall, who now works for the 49ers, and we climbed and had a really good time. It was a great challenge, but amidst all that, really saw some of the things that you mentioned. For me, it was more generally the scale of poverty in comparison to what we define as poverty in the United States. Obviously, we have our problems here, and they need to be addressed and fixed. But this is a region, and this is a country that goes through so many hardships in a really stoic manner. People living in these conditions are appreciative, smiling. They have an energy and exuberance for life that I noticed. And I just said, I want to be a good traveler. This place that gave me such a beautiful experience. I want to come back and do something. I don't know what it is. But I stumbled into meeting some people that were with a group called World Serve International, yep, which has been putting in wells for 10 years. And, I said, let's do something in the NFL that hasn't been done before. And that's a community of people pushing for clean water, not just one well, not just two wells, but different markets. And we'll shoot for 32 wells.
Yeah, that's it's amazing. So you come up with this idea, and it's not a joint venture, but it's your own foundation. And so the idea was to go around. 32 represents 32 different football teams. So trying to get one representative from each team to go out, and each well cost $45,000 or something.
Yeah, 30 to 45K.
Yep, to go do. So by putting a guy in that particular market, the hope is that he can go out and with his circle of friends raise enough money to fund a well. And I think but you have now successfully.
No, it's we. It is we.
All right, I appreciate that, buddy.
It's we, but.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. You've now funded 23 wells. Is that right?
Yeah, we have funded 23, $1.3 million, 70,000 people with clean water. So, come a long way.
Yeah, so this last year, again, Jim Moore and I were invited along with these other group, 6 or 7 NFL players, Chris Long, and then 4 Green Berets, 3 of which got 2 amputees and 1 blind guy. So it was just an amazing experience to go down there. And, Jim and I, our goal together was to raise $15,000. And, we put a really hard push on it. And, we were fortunate with our network of friends and whatnot to raise over $47,000, which funded one of those wells. And so I want to let you know how appreciative I am to that you guys allowed us to dedicate this I think it was well number 18 to my dad, who passed away 5-6 years ago, and to another kid, Nick Pasquale, that passed away at young freshman at UCLA about 4 or 5 years ago as well. So I saw the plaque. It's on a well. It's brought like tears to my eyes to see that. And my dad was such a stand-up guy, and the type of guy that super humble and would have been the type of person that would go down. Well, he actually did down to Mexico and pound nails and help and build homes and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So, it is so fitting for him to be, perpetuity in Africa amongst, one of these villages. So, I don't know. It really touched Jim and I in a really profound way in terms of how grateful they were for, providing water. And, for us, we just turn around and walk 3 feet and you flip a switch and here it comes. And down there, they're going 2-3 miles and, dirty water and disease and girls getting raped and just, the myriad of awful things that happen. And
it's a huge issue. It's a huge issue for the obvious that children, age, under 5 years old are dying disproportionately due to waterborne illnesses. You have half the hospital beds in the world filled with people that are suffering from waterborne illnesses. Imagine the efficiency that our world would run on and the efficiency that these communities would run on if everyone had clean water. And it's a huge task. I mean, it's not just Africa. It's all over the world. And, for us, we're not trying to solve the world water crisis, but we're saving lives. And that's what makes it, every day that we're taking calls, we're trying to recruit new water boys, we're recruiting retired players. It's what makes it worthwhile. And I never feel like, man, this is a pain in the ass, because we're lucky to be able to do something like this with our resources. So, I tell the story about when we were, I think, at about 13,000 feet, that camp where we were playing football with some of the porters. Our porters, who we began to get a real rapport with, as you do in a tent and on the mountain all day, hadn't ever asked us why we were there or who we were or what we did. And I don't think they knew what was going on at all. And I remember sitting there outside the tent, and one of our porters found out what it was we were doing there, and he broke down into tears. And he just told us how important the cause was and how appreciative he was. And that gave me that second wind to reaffirm what we're doing, and to reaffirm that we're not doing this to make ourselves feel good. Sure, we feel good about it, but we're doing this to save lives and to even the scales a little bit. We have so much in this country. The least we can do is something like this.
So what happens when you get to 32?
Well, when we get to 32, we have some more big plans. I didn't think we'd get to 32 this quick. I would venture to guess that we're going to get there by the end of the year. I just wrapped up a call with our WaterBoys this year, setting out the goal to get to 32 and the numbers it'll take to get there. I think in the future there might be some regional expansion. There might be a new goal, which actually I'll just tell you what I think it is. I think eventually, as I pass this thing on to other active players when I retire and take slightly more of a backseat role, still an administrative presence, but we need active players. I think our goal is very attainable at 1 million people. I think at 32 we'll be over well over 100,000 people. So just imagine if we do this for the next 20 years and the momentum grows and our reputation grows, we should be able to provide water for 1 million people. I believe in that reality, and I think we can reach it.
It's just amazing thing that you're doing. You have this amazing career. You're still playing, which is incredible. But, really what I think's happened is that you've seen life, your purpose is really not about being a football player. Your really purpose is creating that platform. That platform has allowed you to do this thing, which you're literally saving lives of all these people. And then you're like, it's just amazing the amount of people you've affected. And then there's this ricochet effect, right, where you're inviting guys like myself and more, and the other guys that were on the Nick Hardwick and Kirsty Ennis and Nate Boyer, and he's involved. And, all these guys who now are going to their communities, their network, right? And making those people aware of what's going on. And, the big term down there in Africa, which, it's so simple but yet so profound, is water is life. And you just don't think about it the way you described it in terms of it's kind of a trickle down. Without water, it has to start there, and then everything else, comes together within a community.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. So
no doubt about it. It's been, it's just amazing to think about, and everybody's got their causes, right? You played in the NFL, and there's guys with all different types of very worthy causes. But the thing I love about clean water is it's easily trackable in your progress. It's simple for people to understand once they see it, and it's life-saving, and it's very relevant right now. We have dealt with some water shortages in our country, and we think we're bulletproof when, as soon as we see what it's like when our watersheds are polluted or our infrastructure goes down, like in Flint, or there's corruption, we see the way it can affect the community. We're not bulletproof, and eventually we're going to have to face these issues as a planet. And also another thing we're getting into with the WaterBoys eventually is conservation efforts, educating people on their watersheds and, what we're doing to avoid another Flint. And that's the very thing, is I could never do this as one player. Certainly I've got a decent name in the NFL, but, I'm trying to get as many big names in as many places as we can get, because if I start something in St. Louis or Boston or Philly, I'm just one guy in one market. And like you alluded to, it's the network aspect of it that really makes this thing go. So, I constantly like to refer to this as a we thing. I know my face is on the website, but if you go on the website, you'll see that we have so many guys that have been involved, and they all put equity into this thing. And, at the end of the day, we just have such a big platform.
No, it's so awesome. So If anybody wants to donate, where would they do that?
So they could go check out WaterBoys.org, and you can follow directions on that page. And there's opportunities to donate individually. There's opportunities to form teams for donation. We have a lot of cool creative ways that people can kind of join together and as businesses or groups, and there's sponsorship opportunities, and we've gotten very creative in fundraising, and what we really rely on is these $5-7 donations. A lot of people might think it doesn't matter if you donate $5 and $7. What am I really doing? But the information's out there that you can calculate what $5 would do for an individual who doesn't have clean water, and it's very trackable, and it's very easy to digest when you look at the numbers why $5 really matters.
Yeah, that's great. So also, in addition to waterboys.org, where you can go and you can donate, I also have on my website, markpattisonnfl.com, and I've got a philanthropy section in there where you can go in and everything goes directly to the WaterBoys. So,
which is awesome, and we appreciate that, man. It's the forces of the universe, man. They bring people together, and that whole trip, guys like yourself, Jim, guys like Luis and Nick, and even Nate. I never thought I'd be climbing a mountain with such a cool collection of people. Kirsty, who I just saw in LA. It's a lifetime bond, and man, we were lucky to all find each other.
Well, what everybody doesn't know is that there's this constant goofy texting chain that all the guys that went down there, the Marine, Green Beret guys and the NFL guys, that it has to be rated and censored, and but it's just like you said, it's just we do something great where it everybody in the ecosystem wins, right? Yeah. And now that we create this bond between ourselves because we came together in 12 days and just like, wow, all these new friends and each one individually is kind of going out and doing their own thing now. So it's just it's a cool deal. So you have to bear with me. I've got one more 747 coming by the.
Where's this one heading? Vegas, maybe?
Oh, this one, this is going off due west towards Hawaii. So it just took off.
Shoot.
Yeah. So. Well, listen, Chris, this has been awesome. I so appreciate it, and I know you and I have kind of been bouncing back and forth trying to put this together, and I knew I wanted to stay on you because I knew it would be worth the effort. You're a deep guy. You're a thoughtful guy, and you just have, you've accomplished so much, but I think you're just getting going.
Yeah, well, I hope so. I mean, football, as you know, and I'm figuring out as I get. Football is it's not your life; it's just part of it, and the most rewarding stuff oftentimes is the stuff we do outside of it. So, and I will say this: like when we climbed that mountain, it was just as emotional as winning a Super Bowl and seeing Kirsty, the first woman above the knee amputee getting to the summit. I mean, that is something special, and so football gave us the opportunity to do something like this. It's not always about the football, and I appreciate. Everything you've done and Jim's done and my Manhattan Beach crew. Yep. And I love tracking the podcast, so I'll keep doing that.
Awesome. All right, buddy. All right, listen, good luck this next year with the Eagles. And, I hope to be a part in some capacity. I already am with WaterBoys going forward, okay?
Yes, sir. Talk to you soon, brother.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast this week. We had another great guest, and it is so awesome to continually have these different people on, talk about their different adversity, how they've overcome that, and what they've done to affect change in their life to become very successful. So really appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, we love the rating and reviews that you guys do on iTunes. If you haven't done that, please go do that. It really helps us in terms of increasing our visibility within iTunes. Anyways, it's just fun to share the love and what these different stories, these different people are all about. So make sure you tune in next week. We appreciate it. And that's it. Bye.